Good evening from Manchester. I'm Yasir Abbas and this is the World in Focus on DM News English. For more than 6 decades, the Indus Waters Treaty has stood as one of the most remarkable diplomatic achievements of 20th century. A rare accord between two bitter rivals that managed to outlive wars, political upheavals and ideological divide. Signed in 1960 under the auspices of the World Bank, the treaty divided the rivers between Pakistan and India. It was at the heart a compromise between geography and geopolitics, a recognition that while borders may divide, nations, rivers do not. At the time, the world hailed it as a triumph of reason over rivalry. The New York Times called it a blueprint of peace in Asia. Pakistani leaders termed it as their lifeline agreement. Indian leaders saw it as a proof of Indian generosity, that even after painful partition, cooperation was still possible. And for decades, that optimism seemed justified. The treaty survived wars in 1965, 71, and even the Kargil conflict of 1999. It became a symbol that even in the most fractured region, dialogue could endure. But the world of 2025 looks very different from the world of 1960. Today, India is a regional powerhouse with ambition, energy, and demands. Pakistan faces acute water scarcity and agriculture dependence on the Indus basin. Climate change is altering glacier flows, rainfall patterns, and river volumes in ways no one imagined 6 decades ago. And now, after 65 years of uneasy cooperation, India has suspended its participation in the treaty, citing terrorism, political hostility, and what it calls a fundamental change of circumstances. Pakistan, for its part, warns that this decision undermines the very foundation of peace between two countries. So tonight, we ask in the beginning of the end of one of the world's most successful water sharing arrangements. Can law and diplomacy hold when politics and climate are rewriting the rules? And if the Indus Water Treaty collapses, what does that mean for the future of South Asia, where 500 million lives depend on these rivers? To unpack these questions, I'm joined by distinguished guest, Mr. Ali Sultan, a lawyer and academic from Pakistan who advises public institutions and international law and has written extensively on water governance and treaty law. Mr. Ali Sultan, welcome to the World in Focus.
Thank you.
Mr. Ali, to begin, just to contextualize the whole Indus Water Treaty, it was signed in 1960, and ever since it has sustained many geopolitical changes to do with South Asia, particularly with India and Pakistan. How do you see its journey until now?
I think until now, as you also pointed out in your introduction, it has been an enduring symbol of confidence building between two South Asian rivals. And it was negotiated for close to a decade. So both the sides had ample opportunities to negotiate the text of the treaty. And it was brokered by the World Bank at the time. And it had huge and wide global support and recognition. So it's been working well until India's recent unilateral action of holding the treaty in abeyance. And under international law, especially under international treaty law, we can consider this effectively as suspension of the treaty from India's end. Now, Pakistan, of course, does not recognize this unilateral suspension for various reasons, which are grounded in international law. The treaty itself has no...
Just to contextualize it in terms of discord which until now had before India and Pakistan, what were the point of contentions before India went to held the treaty in abeyance? Over the period of 60 years, 65 years, what were the point of contentions which required or which basically forced the two countries to at times discuss the treaty or potentially consider the changes due to the changing circumstances?
Okay, well, the treaty basically divided the Indus River system, and the eastern rivers were given to India, while Pakistan was given western rivers. However, India was granted certain use on the western rivers, including for use related to generation of hydroelectric power. And there are technical specifications which are hardwired into the treaty, which allow India to build run-of-the-river storage, run-of-the-river hydroelectric power projects. And the reason why these technical specifications have been hardwired in the treaty is to ensure that Pakistan's uninterrupted supply of rivers from the western rivers continues despite these hydroelectric power projects. Now, beginning around 2000, one could say around 2 decades ago, India and Pakistan started developing differences over these hydroelectric projects. And the treaty itself has a dispute settlement mechanism which allows these differences and disputes to be decided either among the Indus water commissioners of the two countries, or through a neutral expert, or through a court of arbitration, which is constituted by the World Bank. So the two countries have basically sparred about the designs of some of India's hydroelectric power projects, such as Baglihar, Kishanganga, and Ratle. So around 2015, India felt that the differences or the disputes over Kishanganga and Ratle power project should be referred to a neutral expert under the dispute settlement clauses of the treaty, whereas Pakistan felt that court of arbitration was a more appropriate venue to resolve these systematic disputes. So both the countries basically had parallel and conflicting requests to the World Bank, and the World Bank paused the process for about 5 years. And then the World Bank went ahead with a neutral expert, and also at the same time with the Court of Arbitration. So both of these proceedings are currently undergoing.
So,
So
Ali,
Pakistan's
in
position,
terms of water rights, as you comprehensively explained the scope and the dispute mechanism, the construction in the upper riparian areas, which are under the control of India, undoubtedly, how do you see those projects with regards to Pakistan? Does those projects fall in the appropriate use of water, or the appropriate basically scope that was offered to India, that there can be a utilization or there can be some sort of development, but not at the cost of limiting water to the downstream regions in Pakistan? Do you think that those projects were in violation of the treaty?
well, certainly that is Pakistan's position. And the recent rulings by the Court of Arbitration have affirmed Pakistan's position that that the designs with respect to some of these projects, including Kishanganga and Ratle, are not in conformity with the technical specifications which are set out in the treaty. Now, it's unfortunate that India has chosen not to participate in the Court of Arbitration proceedings, although this Court of Arbitration has been constituted by the World Bank. The arbitrators have not been appointed by Pakistan, they have been independently appointed. So if India wants to abide by international rule of law and if it wants to act as a responsible state, then it should participate in the Court of Arbitration proceedings and also abide by its rulings. So it's unfortunate that India has not taken that course.
So,
Now, after its unilateral holding of the treaty in abeyance, India is no longer willing to participate in the neutral expert proceedings as well. And remember, these proceedings were constituted at India's requests. Pakistan um, is participating in both the processes.
So, how do you see the dispute mechanism unfolding then, given the fact that there is a gradual reluctance by India to participate in the arbitration proceedings, and also there is a reluctance to basically accept the judgment of the Court of Arbitration? So, how do you see that the whole idea of dispute resolution turning out, not just in the context of India and Pakistan, but all other treaties which will be signed? What precedent this is going to set?
Well, it's going to set a terrible precedent because if states are not willing to abide by international law, then of course there's going to be anarchy in the global system. And India, of course, is expected to abide by its international law obligations and also to abide by the rulings of these proceedings.
So how do you see, Ali, because the rationale that India provides right now, both politically at home and also their legal position has been throughout, that there has been a fundamental change of circumstances. So how do you see the fundamental change of circumstances narrative or rationale within the context of Indus Water Treaty?
Look, this doctrine of fundamental change of circumstances, it's it's referred to in the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. It could be a potential justification for for excusing one's obligations under a treaty. However, the threshold for fundamental change of circumstances is prohibitively high because if we were to make this threshold easy, then lots of treaties would it would be a lot easier for states to just excuse their obligations under the treaties. So if we filter the Indus Waters Treaty uh, through the framework of fundamental change of circumstances, considering the jurisprudence of the International Court of Justice on fundamental change of circumstances as well, India is not justified, even though, of course, there have been some changes since 1960, but that still does not give India a valid excuse to suspend the treaty.
Of course, in terms of the rationale, there is less room for such narratives to be used in changing a treaty which has been signed and basically guaranteed by an institution such as the World Bank. But how do you see the role of World Bank now that there has been a complete withdrawal? I wouldn't say that the operational capacity of the Indus Water Treaty has completely vanished, but there is a certain degree of reluctance from India to basically or potentially accept World Bank as the guarantor of any future negotiations. How do you see this?
Well, the World Bank's role is now that of a facilitator. It facilitates the establishment of certain dispute settlement mechanisms which are set out in the treaty. But encouragingly for Pakistan, in May, a few days after India's unilateral action of holding the treaty in abeyance, in a press interaction, the World Bank president agreed with Pakistan's position that there is no provision in the Indus Waters Treaty which would allow its unilateral suspension.
Ali, so the dominant narrative right now from New Delhi, and this has been one of their point of approach towards Indus Water Treaty, is attributing Pakistan's alleged role in terrorism in India. So, how allegations such as terrorism can be used in order to step back from a treaty which is to do with such an important resource on which the agriculture or the future of Pakistan depends on. So, in terms of their rationale, how do you see, can terrorism or can an allegation of terrorism or cross-border interference can be used as a rationale to back away from a treaty?
I think in some ways you've answered your question has answered what I wanted to say with the word alleged. Um, Now, if India wants to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty as a countermeasure to the unfortunate incident in Pahalgam, which incidentally was condemned by Pakistan, then it has to first attribute that act with evidence to Pakistan. There clearly has been no such evidence which would link Pakistan to that act. So just based on mere allegations, you cannot suspend a treaty which has nothing to do with terrorism. It is a water sharing agreement between the two countries. So this argument does not wash.
So, are we moving towards an era of water weaponization then?
Well, I hope not, because India itself is a lower riparian when it comes to China, for instance. So it should be careful in terms of how it acts towards other lower riparians where it's the upper riparian. It should not set a state practice which may come back to haunt India at some point.
So there could be a domino effect of upper riparian countries basically reconsidering their arrangement with lower riparian countries, and in this context, India indeed is a lower riparian country if we look at it from a perspective of China. So do you think that there could be a domino effect?
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it, which is why I'm stressing that India should act responsibly. It should stop browbeating us. It should stop bullying Pakistan. We have never said that we are not open to addressing or listening to India's concerns, whether they're related to climate change or some other fundamental changes. But at the same time, we're going to do that as sovereign equals, not not we cannot basically be bullied into it or be browbeaten into it, which is the unfortunate path which India seems to have adopted.
So how do you see is in the context of recent engagement between New Delhi and Kabul, where one of the points of discussion between the two foreign ministers was India helping Kabul with water management. How do you see this? Is India trying to expand the scope of water weaponization and encouraging Kabul to pursue that path as well?
But I think it's too soon to say how this relationship between the interim Afghan government and New Delhi will pan itself out. But I would like to point out that Kabul River, which also feeds into the Indus water system, is actually not part of the Indus Waters Treaty.
But then again, do you think that there could be some sort of arrangements on the Kabul River or some sort of development on the Kabul River which can potentially prevent or divert or basically limit its flow towards Pakistan?
Well, one can't rule it out, but I hope that better sense prevails as far as the interim Afghan government is concerned.
Mr. Lee, another crucial aspect of the Indus Water Treaty is to do with climate change. And given the fact that both Pakistan and India, and largely the international community, is going to face a drastic impact of climate change, and Pakistan being one of the most widely affected regions. How do you see the abrogation, the abeyance of this treaty in the context of climate change?
Well, it is true that since 1960 there has been dramatic climate change, and it has affected both the countries. And it's also true that Indus Water Treaty is a surface water treaty, so it does not deal with the aquifers of the Indus water system. So there is room to update the treaty in the context of climate change. But the way to do that is not through bullying or browbeating Pakistan. It is to it is through a negotiated process where both the sides, possibly with brokering from a third party, will sit across each other as sovereign equals.
So in the context of water distribution and also the flow, there was a mechanism through which there was a data sharing by India, and ever since the treaty has been held in abeyance, such data sharing is either absent or limited. So how do you see that, what potentially Pakistan could do in order to mitigate such risks due to lack of data sharing?
Well, again, it's unfortunate that we are being deprived of critical data related to these rivers by India, even though the Indus Waters Treaty obligates India to share this data. So we need to develop our own systems which would enable us to better monitor the flow of these rivers in our territory. Now, as you're probably aware, in the recent floods also, which have devastated large parts of the country, India did issue warnings, but it didn't share the entire data that it was supposed to share under the treaty. So perhaps if it had done so, it could have helped us prepare ourselves better to deal with this natural calamity.
So on Pakistan's end, there is an argument that, and the same is basically shared by New Delhi as well, that we are not doing enough to utilize the water which has already been given to Pakistan. How do you see this? Do you think that from an infrastructure perspective, from a storage perspective, does Pakistan has to do more in terms of improving its water utilization in order to make most of the rivers that it gets?
Certainly, we can do a lot at our end, but here's the important point. That's our problem. This cannot be used as an excuse by India to excuse itself of its obligations under the Indus Waters Treaty.
So that's something Pakistan to have decide entirely. So as a last thoughts, Ali, so what is your perception, or what is your thought process regarding the future of this treaty? Do you think that both countries will eventually sit together to iron out the differences, or do you think that we have reached a point of no return?
No, I wouldn't say that we've reached a point of no return, because India has unilaterally held the treaty in abeyance. It has actually not terminated it. So there's always this room and scope for peaceful resolution of all disputes, including any water-related disputes which Pakistan and India have. And that is a consistent position which Pakistan has adopted. We're willing to negotiate, we're willing to talk on all outstanding issues, as long as we do so as sovereign equals.
But here's the problem, Mr. Ali, in terms of Pakistan being willing to talk to New Delhi on a host of other issues, including the Indus Water Treaty. There is a general reluctance, there is a refusal on New Delhi sides, and also from an international and institutional perspective, there is a refusal to accept the arbitration of World Bank, and also now there is a refusal to accept the findings of the Permanent Court of International Arbitration. What are the options left for Pakistan now?
Well, we're going to keep on diplomatically engaging the relevant international institutions and our partners and our allies in order to compel India to abide by its international law obligations. And if India does try to divert the waters of the western rivers or to interrupt their supply to Pakistan, then, as we've made it clear in our National Security Committee readout, we would consider this as a provocative act.
So certainly you're suggesting that it will be considered an act of war.
Well, yes, that's what our National Security Committee readout has clearly stated. So let's hope that things don't go that far and better sense prevails in New Delhi, because war is not an option between two nuclear armed South Asian neighbors.
Master Ali, thank you so much for your time and for your wonderful insights from Pakistan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for the revealing discussion on the Indus Water Treaty. As the discussion reveals, the treaty remains at a pivotal moment with both India and Pakistan looking at the issue from a perspective which is both relevant in the context of geopolitics, in the context of climate change, and also questions the survivability of international treaties going beyond just Indus Water Treaty. With the message that the better sense will prevail and there will be a reconsideration of thoughts and actions both from New Delhi and Pakistan. This is it for today, and I'll see you next week with a new topic. Thank you so much.